this video will give you a new tool for your own argument diffusal toolkit. You know all those people who always show up late and waste your time? Horrible people, right? And sure, you might be late sometimes too, but there's always a good reason for it, right? Well, I can bet you that those other people think exactly the same about you. Moreover, the psychological mechanism behind this is at the roots of many arguments about gender too. Fortunately, there are ways we can avoid it. The fundamental attribution error has been described by Edward E. Jones and Victor Harris in 1967. It's simple. When we explain why other people do what they do, especially when we don't like it, we tend to attribute their actions to personality traits and downplay the role of external circumstances. But when we explain our own actions, it's the other way around. A classic example. If you are late for a meeting with me, it's because you are an unreliable person who doesn't respect my time. It's all about your character. But if I'm late for a meeting with you, it's because I was stuck in traffic, I was held up somewhere, I had to finish a thing. It's all external circumstances. But how does this play out in relationship psychology and the gender war? So here's a fun little task for you. Search for any clickbait article or video that is titled 10 things men do wrong in dating that is made by a woman, and you will find that 9 of those 10 things women do just as much. And it works the other way around as well. Ignoring messages, being clingy, making assumptions, being crap in bed, taking no responsibility, only talking about themselves, never asking about you, disappearing after the first date. It's all just a list of things humans do wrong, regardless of gender. In fact, most such pieces should be retitled. The 10 things which are totally fine when I do them, but an absolute travesty when you do them. Similarly, if you search for anything about ghosting, you'll very quickly find that if they do it, it's because they're complete douchebags who have no ounce of respect and consideration left in them. But when we do it, you need to take into account the context. The date was hopeless, they bored us to death, and we can't risk being stuck in pointless discussions and so on and so forth. This is the fundamental attribution error in action. Each one of those clickbaity pieces is a little battle in a pointless gender war we continue to fight, trying to prove to each other that we are right and they are wrong. We're the good ones, we're innocent, we have good intentions, and they are the bad ones, they're guilty and wanting to harm us. And don't get me wrong, there are many actually horrible things that men and women do to each other, and I'm not going to defend them at all. But most everyday things we annoy each other with are really trivial, and they only build up to create this overwhelming image in which we are fundamentally good, with circumstances explaining anything that we sometimes maybe do bad, but they are fundamentally bad, even if by some miracle they sometimes get it right. This is how the fundamental attribution error ends up determining how we describe each other. In turn, this ends up determining how we see each other, too. When you ask women why they don't want to date men, it's because all those entitled bastards only want sex, they have no emotional intelligence, are exploitative, misogynist, undereducated, insensitive, have nothing to offer at all, and besides, men are trash. But men who reflect on those questions might point out that they grew up in a culture which ingrained problematic attitudes in them through stories, religions, and countless social interactions. They were taught to suppress emotions and only receive validation through intimacy. They continue to receive powerful incentives to maintain a strong facade, hide vulnerabilities, and conform to traditional gender roles, and that gaining social status still requires performing masculinity. This is the fundamental attribution error again. When others describe us, we're evil by nature. Is a fundamental characteristic of who we are. But when we describe ourselves, there are circumstances which explain everything that's wrong. Obviously, it works the other way around as well. When you ask men why they don't want to date women, they will tell you that it's because those entitled man-bashing feminazis are all frigid gold diggers with inflated egos and expectations who have no care or empathy left in them and bring nothing to the table. Women who reflect on those things might point out that, well, they are in fact tired and angry with continuing discrimination they experience. They have been socially conditioned to find intimacy difficult and often scary, and to see men as potential danger, to carefully assess if a date is worth the risk, and have only recently reclaimed their right to feel equally valued as humans and to state their boundaries and expectations. Now, as our perceptions of each other are thus skewed by the fundamental attribution error, it also determines how we end up talking to each other. If other people say something that annoys us in a discussion, it's because they're hateful, ignorant, entitled, set on upholding the patriarchy or creating female supremacy, and their mother probably didn't love them. I actually got this one in one discussion, believe it or not, completely out of the blue. But when we say something that others find offensive, well, it's because we've been pushed too hard, because this thing triggered us, because of years of experiencing misogyny, misandry, loneliness, objectification, and rejection, and there's also probably some trauma and an evil ex story on top of that. And even if we do admit that maybe one of us is actually wrong in some case, We tend to explain it with apples. Sure, there's some bad apples in the mix, but otherwise we're wonderful. But them? Oh, there may be some good apples among them, but otherwise the whole basket is a rotten to the core. It's funny because it works whichever side you're on. Want to know how this plays out in practice and what we can do about this? When people start heated discussions, this is how it usually goes. Person A is annoyed with something person B has done and attributes this to the fundamental character flaw of B. Then B is offended because they feel that even if they've done something wrong, it's actually explained by the circumstances. So B attributes A's accusation to the fundamental character flaw of A. And then A is offended because they feel that even if they were a bit harsh in their criticisms, it's also explained by the circumstances. And then you just rinse and repeat. Do you want some examples? You're ignoring my messages again. Why are you so disrespectful? You're only thinking about yourself. Wait, what? I had a really busy week at work and I just need some time to myself too. Oh my God, you're just so clingy. Why do you need to have all those expectations all the time? Okay, well, maybe I need you more now, but it's because the stuff in the team has really shaken me and I could really use a partner to help me through it now. I'm not clingy, or at the gender war level, you're just such a bunch of entitled beeps. You think you deserve everything just for showing up? What do you even bring to the table? Wait, what? It's us who spend so much on dates, do everything we can to entertain you, and do you even know how long it takes to match with anyone decent on the apps these days? What do we bring to the table? Your lot has ridiculous expectations. What do you mean ridiculous? Is what the media tells us dates should look like, what advertisers say we deserve, and besides, can't you see the risk we're taking and the impact it has on our mental health? Ridiculous? What's ridiculous here is you. I bet that you have seen hundreds such discussions. People get stuck in them and they never end well. All they produce is more resentment, blame, and hopelessness, and nobody is ever convinced. Instead, everybody leaves thinking that they have been harmed and the other side is vile, stupid, and evil. But it gets worse. The error plays out not only on the level of a single discussion, but between discussions too. As people get into each next spat, they see what happened last time as a circumstance which excuses them for, once again, committing the fundamental attribution error. Or, in other words, I had 100 discussions in which a person just like you was a complete beep, so I know that you're a complete beep too, and I won't listen to anything you've got to say. Enough doom and gloom. The question is, how do we break out of this vicious circle? Men and women get into constant stupid discussions where we talk past each other. If we took all the energy that we spend on fighting over misunderstandings and used it towards actually solving our problems, well, we'd be that much closer to solving our problems, right? Once you understand how the fundamental attribution error works, you have a new tool in your argument diffusal toolkit, and you can get us closer to solving our problems. When you see a heated disagreement, just check if people involved don't attribute all that annoys them in the other person to their fundamental character flaws without giving enough consideration to the context and circumstances. If yes, try to make them aware of what they're doing. Draw people's attention to the context and circumstances which motivated the other person to say what they said. Suggest that if they themselves have done this very same thing, and they probably have, they would probably not see it as a proof of their own fundamental character flaw. Today, much of this advice has been shared under the banner of nonviolent communication. It's all about moving away from statements which ascribe permanent character traits like, you are so cruel and insensitive, and towards focusing on specific actions and circumstances like, I feel hurt about something you've done. These two messages invite completely different responses. Nobody thinks of themselves as a bad person, so accusing someone of being fundamentally bad, insensitive, and evil leaves them no option but to defend. But telling somebody that they've done a bad thing leaves open the possibility that they are fundamentally a good person who has made a mistake, likely guided by the circumstances. This person won't be so offended and won't need to defend at all costs. They'll just say, I guess, I'm generally good, so I'll try to be better next time. And sure, many times they won't. Many times they'll be too stubborn to admit doing anything wrong. But sometimes they will. I say even a small improvement is better than no improvement at all. Now, here comes the hard part. It's easy to spot cases of fundamental attribution error when other people do it. It's much harder to spot them when we do it. Thus, we're back to our old friend Socrates, who said that you should always try your best to know thyself. We should reflect on what we are doing, ask ourselves the same questions, and hold ourselves responsible to the same standards that we're holding others to. And you don't need to feel horrible for every situation in which you fell for the fundamental attribution error. It's a basic bias in human psychology. We all have it, and it's hard to avoid. But we should all try our best to become better humans, and that includes being a bit more sensitive to the context in which people say and do things. This way, maybe we can finally stop arguing and demonizing each other and start building a better world together. If you'd like more advice on how to do exactly that, follow me now and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dr. Simon Vogt, philosopher and explorer of masculinity, handing you the man's compass.